Okay, we've started recording, so welcome to this January's edition of Pigments 101. We're glad to see everybody here in this new year. We will be talking today about DPP chemistry. And as we've done before, this will be about a 30-minute presentation, followed by a question and answer session. If you have any questions, please use the chat box to enter your question as we go along. And my colleagues will help me at the end organize that. This presentation is being recorded, and all attendees will get the presentation sent to them via email after the call is done. So with that, I will go ahead and get started. I do want to apologize a little bit up front for the extra emails that I sent this week. We just learned that Zoom has updated their software system. And now they're requiring a passcode to join into a webinar. So again, I apologize for the extra emails that you saw from me this week. But we want to make sure that you were able to join in. Excuse me. So we'll go ahead and get started. We're talking about DPP chemistry this session, and primarily they are in the red pigment family. And whether it's a stop sign or a Ferrari, red is a color that catches your attention, and we want to make sure that it keeps your attention. So those pigments will require a high chroma and be fade resistant to maintain that attention throughout the product's lifespan. The classical pigments typically have the right chroma, but they don't have the fastest properties that's required of exterior pigments. The family of DPP pigments mostly are red, but there are orange pigments in the system as well. They have superior chroma and opacity or transparency, depending on what you're looking for, and they do have very good fade resistance to be able to work with the exterior requirements. The DPP pigments are part of, obviously, the organic family, and they are in the grouping of polycyclic chemistry. And you can see where the DPP family fits into the other polycyclic chemistries that are in the organic section. These are considered high performance pigments versus the classical pigments, and just a little bit of a comparison between the classical and high performance pigments. And in one of the main areas is of course into the light and weather fastness, where the high performance pigments will provide you with the most durable pigment for exterior applications. The other key differences is in the heat resistance capabilities. High performance pigments like DPP chemistry have a high heat resistance, especially important for some of the engineering polymers that require that are processed at much higher temperatures. The high performance pigments are also very good for in the coatings area, resistance to solvents, and The other key differences are in the pricing area. The high performance pigments are higher priced, but they do offer much more in their value in use. There's more to a pigment than the price per pound that we are looking at when you consider all of the cost and use based on the improved properties like strength, chroma, durability. When you account for all of those, the value proposition becomes much more attractive for the high performance pigments. And when you're looking at the true cost of the raw materials in context of the total formulation, that's what we talk about when we're talking about the cost in use or value in use with respect to high performance pigments. As far as the introduction, the DPP chemistry was discovered pretty much by accident by Donald Farnham in 1974. He found something that had very unique properties like a very high melting point, high insolubility, and of course the brilliant red color that it produces. We're all familiar with Ciba-Geigy that developed the first DPP-based pigment in 1986. So it's a fairly young pigment in respect to some others. And in the color index spaces that are in the DPP chemistry, we have the pigment red 254, the pigment red 255, the red 264 and 272. Also, there are a couple of oranges, the orange 71 and the orange 73 make up the DPP chemistry. Oops. As I stated before, some of the notable properties, of course, are the heat resistance, the insolubility, and they're good resistant to photo and thermal degradation, and their high chroma values in there. They are well known to be used in automotive paints for their exterior durability aspect of it, as well as their chromaticity. Also in high quality printing, where that durability is also needed. Coloring plastics is key for these particular pigments because of that high heat resistance that they have. And they're also being used in some more niche areas like solar cells and fluorescent imaging. The DPP pigments, as I said, are a fairly young chemistry. They're in the high performance category. From a characteristic perspective, the color ranges from the blue shade red of the pigment red 264 all the way to the yellow shade orange of the pigment orange 71. And you can see where the other DPP chemistries fall in respect to the color shade. They do have the excellent fastness properties and highly insoluble. For Sudarshan, we offer the pigment red 254 and also a number of pigment red 264 products as part of this chemistry portfolio. For the DPPs and the available color indexes that we'll talk about today during this presentation, I thought this slide was a very good one to have to provide for you to have on hand as a good summary of the chemistries that are available and what makes them unique with respect to their chemistry. You can see here in the table that I show what the structure and the aromatic unit is for each of these color indexes. and how they are attached to the polycyclic ring of the DPP chemistry. I'm also including a little bit of a snippet of a color perspective so that you have that readily handy. You can see again the pigment red 264 being the blue shade red, all the way to the pigment orange 71 being the yellow shade orange, and everything in between. And it's these aromatic units that are attached to the polycyclic ring, which influence the shade and the of the pigment by the absorption of the light. And the next set of slides will go into a little bit more details on each of these CIs so that you have them for your reference. We all know and are familiar with the pigment red 254. You can see its aromatic unit that makes it unique and how it attaches onto the polycyclic ring. Here, the red 254 is a highly saturated medium shade red pigment. It has good hiding power, excellent fastness to organic solvents, and has outstanding light and weather resistance. One thing to note with this particular chemistry is that the weather fastness and durability is best at the near mass tone colors. When TiO2 is introduced into the formulation, the lighter the shade, or the more pastel the shade, the more impacted the durability will be because of the photodegradation aspect of TiO2 with this pigment. The next pigment in the series is pigment red 255. Again, you can see the chemical structure of the aromatic ring and how it gets attached to the polycyclic ring. The pigment red 255 is a yellowish shade red pigment. It has excellent hiding power and outdoor durability. And the other more prominent DPP chemistry is the pigment red 264. It has a double ring as its aromatic unit that's attached to the ring. And as I stated before, this is a bluish shade red pigment. It's available both in opaque and transparent versions. The transparent grades do have a very high color strength and excellent durability, and as well as migration and solvent fastness. And these are have very high thermal stability for those high temperature plastic applications. The other red is the pigment red 272. It has its unique aromatic unit that makes that chemical structure. This is a slightly yellowish red shade pigment with high chroma, good hiding power and color strength. It also has the good heat, light, and migration resistance for plastics. Moving on to the oranges, there is 2 oranges in the DPP category. The pigment orange 71, of course, I said was the more yellow shade.
Hey, Bonnie.
Yes.
Before you move on, there's a question to the pigment red 264 from Brian Coleman about whether they are FDA compliant for indirect food contact and plastics.
Yes, they are. So back to pigment orange 71. This was actually a very transparent orange pigment. It has excellent heat stability and migration fastness for plastics. And the last one in the series is the orange 73. This is a brilliant medium shade orange pigment with outstanding chroma has medium opacity and acceptable overpaint and solvent fastness for use in coatings. We talked about the insolubility of DPP chemistries, and this comes from two different places with respect to the DPP molecules. The first one comes from the hydrogen bonding of the molecules on the planar side, so that it has a very strong hydrogen bonding interaction that keeps the molecules on the horizontal space, if you will, tightly together in there. The second area is in the vertical direction, the stacking of the molecules on top of each other. It's a very small stack, so that the crystal then is compact and tightly bound to each other, which renders that insolubility. And that insolubility then translates to provide the thermal and photo degradation resistance in these types of chemistries. And now we've seen this slide before. We all talk about crystal shapes, and the DPP chemistry typically falls into the block type of shapes with aspect ratios in the 1:4 range for this particular type of chemistry. I've included here a couple of TEM pictures of red 254 on the left, which it has, they have typical aspect ratios in the 1:2 range. The 264 on the right, those aspect ratios, oh, I spelled that wrong, is in the order of 2:3 in there. So they all fall into that block or square type of crystal shape. We've talked in other webinars about the pigment manufacturing process or synthesis process. And I wanted to give a little bit of information, more information on how each of the steps interacts with each other to form that final product. As we said, the first steps in the process, of course, determines what the chemical identity of the pigment is, what that molecule is supposed to be. The end process of all of those synthesis steps is what is considered the crude pigment. This is not the end product, but the final chemical, physical crystal product is the crude product. And then once there, the end application determines what the finishing and surface treatments are used to complete the pigment process. And the relationship on the right-hand side there of the screen talks about how the chemistry, the finishing, and the surface treatment steps of the process interact with each other to provide the physical properties of that particular pigment. So you can see how each one of those results in some part of the property portfolio of each of the pigments. And when we talk about these high-performance pigments like DPP chemistry, where there is the combination of the chemistry, the finishing, and the surface treatment, you can see how that results in a higher cost, as well as but a improved dispersibility. And these are what determine that additional valuing use that I spoke about earlier. Just a brief process review on the DPP chemistry process. In this particular case, there are two main synthesis steps in the reaction process that are key to the DPP chemistry. Following this is a quenching step, which halts the synthesis and crystal growth to be able to reach the endpoint, the pigment endpoint that you're looking for. And I'll go into a little bit more details on that process as well. Following that is the pigmentation, and this determines the final end application properties that are required for that one. And of course, like every other pigment, it has to be filtered and dried. Going into a little bit more detail, the first two steps in the synthesis, again, will define the chemistry that we're using. So in the first step, the sodium, the sodium is dissolution in tertiary amyl alcohol is the first key step of that reaction process. Following that is where the addition of the aromatic units are used to create the particular color index that we are looking for. Following this is the quenching. Again, that establishes that final crude pigment that will then go on to make the final pigment. And this particular step is very important in establishing the particle size and the opacity of the final pigment. The next step is in the pigmentation and ripening and conditioning. This is where the crystals are then further grown and surface treated based on the final end application. And this particular step is very critical in determining the shade as well as opacity. And like other pigments, filtration and surface treatment is the following step, and that's all based on the end application. For DPP chemistry, either surfactants or synergists are used as surface treatment, and these then result in the dispersibility properties and opacity that you're looking for. And then, of course, the final step would be the drying and pulverization of the final pigment product. And those are defined by the end application. And that'll give you the appropriate particle size and strength, as well as dispersibility and other physical properties of the performance based on the application required. I talked about a couple of key parameters in the manufacturing process. The first one being it is in the quenching. And so here we are using polar solvents are the preferred solvents to use because they're going to act as the hydrogen donor that will provide the hydrogen needed for this protonation event. They also are able to solubilize the mineral acids that are part of the process. The key area here is in the temperature of that quenching. When the temperature is lower, this will provide a smaller, more uniform particle size growth, which is helpful in the for the transparent versions. Higher temperatures will provide the more opaque type of products. So I included a couple of TEMs of the Pigment Red 254, the opaque version and the transparent version. And those particular two versions obviously are key towards our key examples for the quenching temperature. Surfactants are also used for the particle size growth stabilization. So once you get your particle size where you want it to be, you need to stabilize that and to prevent the aggregation of those pigments because we don't want them to be too hard put together so that the pigment powder that you receive as part of your system can be well dispersed. The second key parameter, as I mentioned, is in the pigmentation step. Typically, we try to keep the pigmentation step carried out in the same solvents that are used for quenching, obviously to keep the cycle time to a minimum, as well as keeping the cost down by not having to switch out to a different solvent. The choice of solvent is a pretty complicated set of experiments to make sure that we have the right solvents to result in the desired properties that we're looking for, because that solvent then can change the properties, whether it be a pigment that is required for a plastic application or a liquid coatings application. The choice of solvent then helps to determine the best solvent for those end applications. In this step, also elevated temperatures are preferred, so that we can achieve that desired hue and the final opacity that we're looking for. And transparency can also be obtained by physical milling or a kneading process, or also through the use of synergists and additives that we spoke about before. So there are a number of ways to impact that transparency that we are looking for. We've seen this slide before in previous editions. This refers to the end use application dispersion process and how you can manipulate that dispersion process to manipulate the color. So in this for this category, if your dispersion process is the intensity of the dispersion process is increased, like going more passes or smaller media size, then you can shift the color, the end color of your dispersion to the yellower side. And conversely, if you soften the dispersion process, that will shift the end color to the bluer side. And also, this is a slide we've seen before, and this results or refers to the dispersion process. As I mentioned earlier in the talk, the high performance pigments are clearly need to be viewed as a value in use versus just a traditional cost per pound. And this is a key area to be able to obtain as much of that value in use as you can. So your formulation needs to be able to wet the pigment out as best as possible, so that it sets up the dispersion process or particle size reduction process to be as best as it can be to get that particle size reduction down. So you'll want to make sure that your dispersion process is optimized for that particular formulation and performance chemistry. And then finally, once the particle size is reduced to where it needs to be, we need to be able to have this formulation stabilize that particle size so that you maintain all of the good that you've developed out of that formulation and process to get that full value in use for the DPP chemistry. Talked about surface modifications with respect to DPP chemistry. There are many ways to do surface treatments, surface modifications. The most ones that we see here are on the organic side. and are using pigment derivatives for these, or synergists is another term that are used. Typically, either other DPP chemistries are used as derivatives. Quinaquinones can also be used as derivatives, and even paralenes have been used for derivatives. Polymers are also used in the surface modification aspect of it. On the inorganic side, metal oxides have been used in the past, and as well as grafting. For coatings and inks, these surface modifications provide, typically they are there to provide improvements in the rheology of the system, and that rheology then can lead to improved gloss by providing a lower viscosity and better grind. It also can help with your VOC formulation. Because of the lower viscosity, you can use higher solids formulations with these because of the surface modification on the DPP chemistries. And the other area that we spoke about, of course, is formulation economics. And that's kind of a funny term, but it allows for higher pigment loadings so that your batch of dispersion then becomes can be used with more volume of finished goods with one batch of dispersion because of the higher pigment loading. From the plastic side of this, the surface modifications then will improve help with the dispersibility. It also can help with the warping and crystallization behaviors of the plastic formulation. As far as the Sudarshan portfolio of products is concerned, the DPPs fall into our Sudaperm line of pigments. They of course are the high performance pigments in here, so they are also provide that value and use area as far as the economically friendly area, because of the extra performance properties that we get out of the DPP chemistry. From the again, from the Sudarshan portfolio, I've pulled out the the red space, and you can see the circled products. Color indexes are products that Sudarshan produces, and of course the two DPP chemistries that we have are the Pigment Red 264 primarily, and the Red 254. Just a couple of acknowledgements before we move on to any questions. I really like to pay a special acknowledgement to the Sudarshan DPP R&D team for their help with this presentation, especially Sud and Wasim. They've helped me considerably over the years with my own personal journey of pigment chemistry learning, as well as we've joined up with a lot of efforts to teach the application end of pigments to the R&D teams. And of course, our technical service team in India that supports our team here in North America, with Kunal being our coordination point person. This concludes our DPP Pigments 101. Our next series will start with some azochemistry, and I've divided this into two parts. In February, we'll talk about the yellows in this chemistry, and then in March we'll conclude the series with the oranges and the reds. So next month you'll see the invitation for the next series for the yellow azo part. And of course, couldn't do this without the help of our North American team. So if you have any questions or need any information or samples, you can reach out to any one of us, and we'd be glad to help get you what you need for your coloration needs as part of that as well. And at this point, I'd like to open it up to any questions that you may have with respect to this presentation. Okay, so we've got one question here. Let me put my glasses on here. And the question is, how strong intermolecular hydrogen bonding and stacking interactions discuss impact dispersibility? This is part of this does not necessarily impact the dispersibility, because here we're talking molecules to molecules and not crystals to crystals. So this would not necessarily impact the dispersibility part, just the durability. Are there any other questions? Okay, I don't see any more here. So with that, I will bring this edition to a close. And again, I'd just like to thank everybody for participation in today's webinar. And if you do have any questions after you leave here today, please feel free to reach out to us. And we look forward to seeing you all next week or next month for the next edition. There was one question here is, are we able to review this? Yes, I will be sending out the presentation to all of the participants of this webinar so that you'll have that for your records. And if any questions do come up, please feel free to reach out.
Thanks, Bonnie. Well done.
All right. Take care, everybody. And if there's anything else, please let us know, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Bonnie. Good job, Bonnie. Thank you.
Okay.
Have a
Bye-bye,
good day.
everybody.
Thank you, Bonnie.